You're a dropout.
Wait.
Zuckerberg.
Not everybody can do what I do, though. I got
No,
really
but Zuckerberg's a dropout. Gates is a dropout.
Hold on. No. Hold on.
They dropped out of Harvard.
People like Bill Gates and Zuckerberg quit school because they were too busy working on projects.
Correct.
If you're a guy that's failing like remedial algebra and you quit school, you're not going to become the next Gates or Zuckerberg.
Patrick Bet-David brought on this woke idiot Destiny onto his show and absolutely humiliated him live in front of this entire panel. This thing got pretty brutal whenever Destiny was asked about education and his stance on education. Of course, Destiny had the lame-ass answer, one of these lame-ass answers that he always has. But Patrick Bet-David had to put him in his place. Let's get into this clip here where Patrick Bet-David annihilates this woke idiot Destiny for these ridiculous takes that he has here live on the PBD Podcast and the Valuetainment YouTube channel.
Current education system. What do you think about the current education system that we have?
That's a really broad question.
Well, you said you like opinions, so go for it. Give us.
Okay, I don't have a strong opinion on things I don't know anything about. You want to talk about like colleges? You want to talk about like K-12?
You think go through both. Yesterday Kyle had a lot of strong opinions on, we should forgive all the college debt, all that stuff. But I'm talking more the format, like our educational system, K through 12, and you can go into college as well.
I read a quote a long time ago. I don't remember who it was from, but the quote that I read was that if you were to pull somebody out of the 18th century and you were to transport them into today, the only thing they would recognize would be the schools. That we have a way of educating people, and we've done it for hundreds of years. And
that quote's completely false.
Okay, well,
we didn't have schools in the 1700s.
Nobody got educated anywhere in the.
We didn't have schools in the 1700s. We didn't have schools. You're saying that they would recognize the schools.
There were no schools in England or whatever. People weren't getting.
There must have been some sort of
colleges,
schools.
But not schools.
Okay, colleges. Sorry.
But not schools. So they wouldn't recognize the school system.
Okay. What is our terms? Does college not count as school or?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
When you say schools, you mean K through 12. We call college colleges.
Okay, well, I don't mean that, but maybe for the purpose of this conversation, then we can mean that. Okay, college is a separate thing from school. I feel like there are a couple of, if we're talking about classes, I feel like there are a few basic classes that every student should be required to take that we don't. So things like a basic home ec class, I think a basic psych and a basic philosophy course, I think would be really important. Just a couple of the things that help us exist in the world and file our taxes and be a little bit critical of the things we watch. And then I know that largely speaking, I know that we've got troubles in schools that throwing more money, at least in some places, doesn't seem to help. But I think schools are hard because sometimes that's the last stop of a whole bunch of problems prior to that, right? If you've got a kid coming from a single parent family who's not getting much sleep, whose household is in a really, fucked up area, at that point, how much can a particular K through 12 school actually do for the child? I'm not entirely sure. Past that, if we're talking about colleges, I think colleges are pretty okay in the United States. We have our really good schools that people all around the world come to get educated in. I think that people opt too much for out-of-state schools. You've got people talking about, I've got, $200,000 in debt. And it's oh, okay, cool. Are you a doctor? And they're like, no, I'm a mechanical engineer, but I did 7 years of out-of-state, plus tuition and board and everything. And it's why the fuck did you do that? But yeah, I think largely speaking, I think that the college stuff is okay. I'm not a big fan of student loan forgiveness.
Why not?
Coming from a working poor background before I got into streaming, I feel the middle class asks for a lot of tax breaks sometimes. And when I look at really working poor people, I'm damn, these people are fucked. Okay, and you want to have your student loan debt forgiven when you're going to go on to become some of the top tier earners and all of.
Yeah, the problem with what Destiny is saying right here, and I agree. There's a lot of people who are working really hard who make no money who get absolutely screwed with taxes. I think every single person who pays taxes in the United States gets screwed with taxes, to be honest with you. But that is true. The problem with that is it's hard to separate these people by anything except for their income, right? And so if you were to say, okay, let's give people with low income tax breaks, then that also lumps in the people who aren't working hard, who are just sitting back collecting food stamps and don't want to work. So it's really hard to give these people any sort of help, even though I agree these people are working really hard and they should get some sort of help in an ideal world. But we don't live in an ideal world. So it's really difficult to help these people because of the losers who just sit back, collect food stamps, and just pop out children like crazy. So it's a really unfortunate situation where I agree with Destiny. There's a lot of people who work really hard and they get absolutely screwed with taxes. And that sucks. But unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world. We don't live in a perfect world. So we can't help those people because, and if you have a solution, leave it in the comments for how we can differentiate the people who are working hard versus the people who just don't really want to work. How can we separate them and how can we identify them with anything except for income level?
Society. I think if you look at I know that
Very interesting.
Yeah, the cost of education has grown, but the average amount of time to pay back a degree based on getting a degree, I think is about the same as it always has been.
20 years to pay back your debt. That's the average.
I think I thought it was 15, but it might be 20. I guess 21.
Maybe for,
yeah, but like
go-getters like you can do it in 15, but on average, I think it's 19, 20 years.
Maybe, yeah. But the people that earn college degrees go on to become the highest earners in society. So if we're going to target stimulus towards any part of like the economy, I'd rather go towards people that are like working poor and not towards people that are like engineers that just want to get rid of like a $500, $600 a month like student loan debt payment.
You're saying targeting stimulus
or anything?
Like,
when we talk about
rather than spend the money to pay off people's debt that they chose to incur themselves in order to get ahead in this life,
that they're going to be rewarded for.
Well, there are limits to it. And by the way, the whole Biden $10,000 student loan, it didn't pass, correct? This was something. Well, it didn't happen. It got struck down.
I think it's in the.
It stalled in the Supreme Court. I want to say.
I think it's in the new.
Point is, nobody got the $10,000 or $20,000.
I know that
erased.
the site was open, and I know people were putting in applications. I don't know if anybody's gotten it yet.
Don't get me started on these sites. They're crashing.
On the websites.
But there were limitations. I think if you made over $150,000 a year, you did not qualify.
Yeah, and then people with Pell Grants were qualified for up to $20,000. If you were going to do it, I think it was probably the best way to do it, and it's maybe a good way to get young people to vote, even though they don't otherwise.
You even point this out. Like, I'll say this: college prep and career readiness is a Ponzi scheme. They got your kid for 12 years. They've already convinced you, and they've got 12 years to convince the kid you need to go to college, because if you don't go to college, you're screwed. And so you got to go to college. And what is that? That's just, you got to pay a lot of money to a school somewhere so that you have a college degree. And nowhere in school do they say why you have to go to college. It's just so that you can earn the money. Mm-hmm. But it's not like, let's make a plan for you. If you go to this school, it will cost you $80,000 total over 4 years, and then you have this potential of this earning. No, you can go for basket weaving and get $200,000 in debt or whatever, and you completely unemployable. And so my point is, the whole thing is, at this point, it's just a Ponzi scheme. It might be based on data that came from 50 years ago, but at this point, we got to wake up and smell the coffee. Kids don't necessarily have to go to college. And you went to school, you graduated.
No, I failed.
Okay.
Well, I had to work too much. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I completely agree with, by the way. I think it's absolutely hilarious how people act like online education is a complete scam. Like, it's just so funny to me because you guys probably don't know, but I'm a YouTube strategist, right? I'm a YouTube coach. I work for a lot of the YouTubers, especially in the politics space, that you guys probably watch on a daily basis, a lot of the larger channels, right? And whenever I do like advertising or whenever I mention that to people, a lot of people are always like, oh, that's a scam, right? Like that's a get rich quick scheme type thing. And like, I mean, it kind of is like, yeah, you don't have time to get rich slow, so you better get rich quick, right? So yeah, that's the goal. But it's so funny how people think like, oh yeah, a $5,000 course or something, online course, is a complete scam. A $5,000 course that can teach you how to make 10 to 20 to 30K a month from the YouTube platform, from your bedroom. That's a scam. And yet paying 40, 50, 60, sometimes even $100,000 to go to college to make 50K a year. Oh, that's not a scam at all. That makes complete sense. It doesn't make any sense at all, man. It doesn't make any sense. College is a complete scam. And they've done a great job at brainwashing people into thinking that that's just the natural next step after high school. But in reality, colleges nowadays are just a very expensive indoctrination camp. I think it's some crazy stat like 10% of college graduates ever make $100,000 in a year. Man, like that's insane. I made, I don't even want to say that, but let's just say that that's not abnormal for me to make in a month, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh yeah, right, whatever, but it's true. And that's what all of my friends are making in a month. That's what online money is like. That's what people have to understand, man. There's way more efficient ways to make money than going to college and becoming a doctor, or even going to trade school and getting into a trade. Making $100,000 a year is not really enough anymore. If you want to have a big family, if you want to have a nice lifestyle, You got to make more than that. And I know that's so harsh to hear. Some people are going to get so pissed off at that, but that's just the reality, man. And going to college, not only do you have a low chance of even making 6 figures in a year, which is not even that good anymore because of inflation, because of just everything, right? But also it's an indoctrination camp. Your brain is going to be ruined by college. And I remember when I first started going to college, I went to like a community college, and I had a really woke professor for an English class. And I remember I used to write like anti-Trump essays, knowing that it would just get me bonus points with the professor. Like I would just, I never didn't like Trump. You know, it was a glorious day. I was in high school when he won in 2016, and and it was a glorious day. I made fun of all of the wokies in the school, but I was doing like dual enrollment or whatever it is, where you go to college and high school at the same time. And I would write anti-Trump essays for my college class because I knew it would get me bonus points. That's how much of an indoctrination camp these things are, man. It's such a waste of money. It's such a scam, and it's just straight up brainwashing.
You're a dropout.
Wait,
Zuckerberg.
Not everybody can do what I do, though.
But Zuckerberg's a dropout. Gates is a dropout.
Hold on, no. Hold on.
Dropped out of Harvard.
People like Bill Gates and Zuckerberg quit school because they were too busy working on projects. Correct. If you're a guy that's failing like remedial algebra and you quit school, you're not going to become the next Gates or Zuckerberg.
But bear with me. What I'm saying is, you do not have to have a college degree to succeed in life. And so, setting up a child and saying you have to have a college degree in order to succeed is a false paradigm. It's just false. There are a lot of people who succeed. In fact, most of my friends, I don't know, did you graduate? Okay. Most of my friends who are entrepreneurs, who are self-starters, who are successful in life, did not go to college and did not graduate, or did go to college for a short term and figured it out and didn't graduate. And so my point is, it's a Ponzi scheme. They're all in debt, and now they're all saying, "Hey, government, bail me out."
I think you're doing a disservice to college. Hear me out, because there's parts of what you're saying that I agree with, and there's parts of what you're saying that I just think is not the best portrayal.
The only other person I've ever met that's actually to defend college on a show.
Yeah, I'm curious. Because there's different strokes for different folks. When you say that college is a Ponzi scheme, it depends on this is why I think the decisions you're making when you're 17 and 18 are the most important decisions of your life. Like, where am I going to school? You really have to do the ROI on college, because it's been proven that high school...
You're completely unprepared to make those decisions.
Totally agree.
Youth is wasted on the young. That's true.
But it's been proven that if you look at the math, that if a high school degree, you'll earn $1 million over your lifetime.
$1 million per college degree.
$2 million,
right?
exactly. Yeah. $2 million, which you will earn on a college degree. Okay, and then as you get a PhD or a master's, you can earn lifetime earnings on average $3, $4, $5 million.
Right
now, for every Bill Gates that drops out, Mark Zuckerberg that drops out, or PBD that is go to college, there's hundreds and thousands of people that are just average people. So that's why I totally agree with you on this. Here's the problem that I think is lacking in America. Is there is a need for technical schools, right? These vocational schools. But the problem is, if you're going to go to high school, right, you're going to go K through 12, and you're taking all these classes, algebra, biology, math, this, that, and they say, hey, by the way, after high school, you should go become a plumber. What 18-year-old kid is going to be like, I've been in school this whole time, and now you want me to go back to being a plumber? And what they don't understand is some plumbers will make $100,000 a year, and you might only make $40,000 a year with your liberal arts degree.
New York,
but
so you're making my point for me.
No, but the point is this: is that very few people are going to go through school for 18 years or 12 years and then be like, all right, let me go be a plumber or a sewage guy or a garbage man. Even though the ROI on that is greater than sometimes a college degree.
Only because of the whole college prep and career readiness Ponzi scheme. That's the only reason that's true.
Why is it a Ponzi scheme? If you get a degree, you get compensated for it.
Because like I said, only 10%, because of what's promised. You know, they say that like if you go to college, you're basically guaranteed success. You're guaranteed, at least 6 figures a year if you graduate with a good degree. And if only 10% of college graduates ever make 6 figures a year, that's really bad. And I agree with Adam, and I somewhat agree with Destiny as well, where a lot of people who aren't going to college, it's not because they have massive aspirations such as Mark Zuckerberg or something like that, right? A lot of people who don't go to college or who drop out of college, they're just losers, but they're destined to be losers anyway. Even if they go to college, they're still going to be losers. But if you have big aspirations, if you want to live like a good lifestyle, if you want to be able to provide a really good lifestyle for your family and never have to decide between, I don't even know, like you never have to decide between having a nice house and having a nice car. You could just have both. You could have multiple cars, you know, that type of stuff. Then going to college is probably not the highest percentage way to do that. If you have goals and ambitions and I feel like I'm Tony Robbins right now, but it's just the truth, man. College is not the place to go if you have massive goals and ambitions. You're not going to go too far. But let me know in the comments what you guys think about Destiny getting his ideas absolutely shut down by Sam Sorbo here and by Patrick Bet David. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this whole PBD versus Destiny situation here live on the PBD Podcast and the Valuetainment YouTube channel.